With African Ministers of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, they're meeting in the Nigerian capital, Abuja, for the 7th joint conference of the African Union and the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa. The conference is looking at progress made towards industrial development under the theme of industrialization for inclusive and transformative development across Africa as a whole. Now, CCTV's Peter Akaba is in the Nigerian capital, and that's exactly where he joins us from right about now. Peter, usually the talk, unfortunately, across Africa doesn't match the action as far as getting industrialization is concerned. What are the odds that this will just turn out to be another talking shop?
Well, indeed, Rama, that might indeed be a distinct possibility, but this time round, I'd hazard to say the answer to your question is no. This time there might actually be something going on. And the reason I'll tell you is, having read a book called Decision Points, this is an autobiography by former American President George Bush, and in it he says that he had a conversation with the then president of China, Hu Jintao, who he asked what the major issue that kept him awake at night was, and the answer was plain and simple: how to create 25 million new jobs every year for the youth. And this is a challenge that I think that even African leaders today are keen to tackle. The fact that right across the continent, political and social unrest brought about by the so-called youth bulge, youth were not proactively engaged and being able to engage in various vices. They want to tame this issue and at the same time turn a profit. This, of course, has been a major theme here at the conference. And my colleague Jerome Chala has been an integral part of this team here, trying to analyze and put together, make sense of what exactly the discussions are all about and give us analysis of what exactly is going on. This is his story.
Africa's current economic performance stands in sharp contrast with the 1980s, a decade characterized by slow growth and a crushing debt burden. Over the last 5 years, African countries have ranked among the world's fastest growing, and the continent emerged as a top investment destination owing to immense natural and human resources. But a lot of the continent's potential remains untapped, especially considering that most countries are trapped in extractive and commodity-producing sectors. For the next 6 days, African ministers and economic affairs will be reviewing growth and set policy directions in attempts to fast-track the continent's industrialization process.
Despite the rapid economic growth over the last decade, Africa continues to display glaring contradictions between economic and social indicators. Poverty remains pervasive and high, and reducing inequality and improving human development continues to be a challenge on the continent.
Participants here trust that there are a lot of gains to be made from a more inclusive process that facilitates integration and flexible economic processes. Of particular interest would be an economic boom that results in creation of decent jobs for the continent's bulging youth population.
We expect value addition and diversification, hoping that all that will lead to accelerated, stable, sustained and inclusive growth, which will in turn lead to sound, resilient and sustainable development.
At the moment, focus is on these experts and finance ministers, not just to discuss strategies, but develop practical work plans to leap the continent forward. In the absence of significant value-adding activities in Africa, the continent is invariably reduced to being a net exporter of jobs to the rest of the world. And now the ministers of economic affairs of Africa want this to change. But it won't be an easy job for them, as what they want is implementing policy direction, something that has been a challenge for a while. Grumjala, CCTV, Abuja, Nigeria.
Well, not an easy job indeed. There, Jerome Chala, CCTV Africa's very own Jerome Chala, bringing us his perspective from the conference. Another major running theme here today has been financing. How to finance the push for African industrialization. The answer to that question, of course, is varied depending on who you ask. It is a question I put to one gentleman. His name is Martin Hodzik. He's from Action Aid International, working for the Tax Justice Network. And one perspective was that Africa loses up to $50 billion, indeed upwards of $50 billion every year through what has been termed illicit financial flows. This, of course, is cash that can be put towards financing that initiative, and this is what he had to say.
It's important that Africa develops, and industrialization is part of it. But what is also important, that Africa benefits from this, that it doesn't end up just extracting resources, processing them a bit, and then exporting them. It's important that the benefits from the industries, benefits from the resources stay here, that the fair share of tax is paid, and that this tax ends up in delivering essential services. Because with the better schools, they're going to be highly qualified workers, engineers, doctors who can help to develop the continent.
Indeed, of course, we'll certainly have plenty to look forward to over the next couple of days there, Peter. What should we expect, however, in the next 24 hours from the conference?
Well, of course, Rama, the conversation does continue here in Abuja. As we indicated earlier, a whole raft of international guests are expected to continue arriving here. Indeed, upwards of 80 different organizations and nations from right across the world, not just Africa, expected to come into the conference and continue the discussions in order to ensure that this conversation does become reality going forward, and that indeed Africa does begin to industrialize. About the timeline, no one is really sure yet, but we indeed, of course, will be keeping tabs on that and keep you updated as we do go forward, Rama.
Indeed, we'll have to leave it there for the time being. Good luck in Abuja. Thank you very much for that. That's CCTV's Peter Akaba live from the Nigerian capital over in West Africa.